You're listening to the Bridge podcast, brought to you by Bridge, New Frontiers in Type 1 Diabetes.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this absolutely exciting podcast series. And we'll have a huge multitude of fabulous speakers talking about different areas of type 1 diabetes, but specifically around screening, the whole autoimmune profile, what's coming in that space, etc. So do please join us for the whole series. But for this one, we're going to start off with Dr. Dutta from Breakthrough T1D. I will let him introduce himself, but suffice to say, he is definitely one of the leaders in this particular field.
Thank you, Dr. Kar, and thank you to the Bridgeport team here for including me in this podcast series. I'm Dr. Sanjoy Dutta, Chief Scientific Officer at Breakthrough T1D, formerly known as JDRF, which is the world's largest funding organization for research and advocacy globally. And I'm in this role for over 6 years, but I've been with the organization for 15 plus years. And our mission is to support the development of life-changing breakthroughs that can prevent, treat, and cure type 1 diabetes and its complications.
Thank you. I mean, Breakthrough T1D has done some absolutely astonishing work in the world of type 1 diabetes. And I think we've just come back from some meetings where we heard more developments going on. But in relation to this, if you elaborate, if you look at the current projects and goals that we have, what do you feel about where do you think Breakthrough T1D is? Are we on the cusp of something big? And all these debate that's going on about antibodies and Breakthrough T1D seems to be at the forefront of all of that. So where do you see it all fitting in and your role, etc.?
Thank you. That's it's difficult to give a short answer because there's a lot of excitement going on. It has taken us a long time to understand type 1 diabetes, its autoimmune nature, identify causes and triggers of type 1 diabetes, how it can, on one hand, affect almost anyone in the general population. On the other hand, the incidence and prevalence of type 1 diabetes is increasing, but we still have ways to go to figure out. But all of this, all of the research over the last 3 decades or so is paying its dividends now. So we are able to identify those individuals with preclinical presentation of type 1 diabetes through autoantibody status in the serum. There are some exceptions, but that's been a big win in the field. Another win has been to be able to stage type 1 diabetes even before one is put on insulin treatment with frank insulin dependence. And this has enabled us to intervene in earlier stages of the disease and forestall the disease progression. And now we have also been able to, in terms of breakthroughs, identify ways to have better glucose control with reduced disease burden. This has been very helpful across all ages and stages of people with established insulin requiring type 1 diabetes. And finally, although I can add many more things, is we are able to provide insulin independence in clinical trials right now through the use of lab-engineered cells that are designed to produce insulins or the pancreatic beta cells that are lost in a person with type 1 diabetes. And the list goes on. So there's a lot of excitement, Dr. Kar, in the field and promise, most importantly, hope and promise for people living with this condition and also people that are likely to develop this condition in the future.
So one thing that comes up very clearly, if I may say so, is you clearly have a big passion in yourself. What drives your passion? I mean, you seem to be really invested in this. It doesn't seem to be just a job. So what sort of attracts you towards it?
Well, I will say the mission of the organization. The mission of the organization, which I've already stated, so I won't repeat here, is embedded, is ingrained in the DNA of every individual staff member within the organization, but also the broader, bigger T1D community. There is a sense of, I share it, I think most of my, if not all of my colleagues share it, there's a sense of privilege in working towards a mission organization, but also a sense of responsibility and accountability. And that gives a huge opportunity to be able to make a difference, no matter what role you're playing, whether you're an IT individual, a scientist like myself, you are an advocate for the cause, so on and so forth. So the sense of, this feeling of privilege and a sense of responsibility and accountability drives me, and I think everyone involved with Breakthrough T1D each day.
So one of the things you briefly touched upon when you were going to the whole, gamut of things that Breakthrough T1D are doing was around the topic of screening and monitoring. You mentioned briefly the consensus guidance. So would you let us know what your view about that is, how much of a game changer it is? I know the word is used quite frequently, but do you feel like it does bring into picture a hugely important change of focus in the world of type 1 diabetes?
Yeah, Dr. Kar, for the longest time, we have known that identifying individuals that have autoantibody status, positive status, and that the fact that they are at risk, and also be able to estimate with decent positive predictive value when they are going to convert from being autoantibody positive, autoimmune active condition, but not requiring insulin, to go into frank insulin requiring diabetes. And however, even though we have known the advantages of screening or early detection of these individuals and providing them care, there has been inertia in the field, clinical inertia, people with diabetes inertia, for several reasons. One is an appreciation about the severity of type 1 diabetes, and the fact that it can hit anyone, any day, at any time, anywhere in the world, was not appreciated. It's beginning to be appreciated now. The million-dollar question then comes is, how do we get over the clinical inertia and the people with diabetes inertia, or the lack of awareness and knowledge? And that's where the monitoring guidance comes in. The monitoring guidance can not only let you know who to screen, who to monitor, when to monitor, how to monitor. It provides a playbook to a clinician. And by clinician, I don't not only mean the doctors, but also the allied healthcare professionals. They now have a path forward. And the second thing is that it's also getting standardized, because depending on the resources available in your geographies, you can take chapters from this playbook here. You can take nuggets from the playbook and customize it to provide uniform care that is amenable to your local healthcare system and your local geography. So I would say the monitoring guidance now licenses a licensed healthcare professional to take care of these individuals when they're diagnosed with autoantibody positivity, and lead them, hold their hand along this journey of going from pre-insulin requiring to insulin requiring type 1 diabetes. So it's a pretty good thing. But as you know, I'll end with this, Dr. Kar. This is our first foray in the field here. It's very important because it comes on the heels of clinical guidance provided for early detection by American Diabetes Association and other diabetes associations. I am positive that while this is great, it's going to only enhance year over year with the collective intelligence and experience of everyone practicing this around the world. So there will be more to come, but this is definitely the first but a major step in the field of type 1 diabetes monitoring for risk.
Thank you. I mean, one of the things, if I may share my view with you, we look at reading it, I think it also brings into focus, for a lot of people, the appreciation of the 3 stages, right? I think for a lot of clinicians, it might have been something they have read, but to have that focus in, we talk about stage 1 and stage 2, that they're asymptomatic, but we could be, non-localized by stage 3. All of those 3 stages, and I don't know whether you agree, but I think it also highlights to a lot of clinicians the need to have their professional development in that side of things, be aware of what's coming. So that probably is also another aspect. Do you feel that's also sort of is fleshed out by the guidance? Does it help clinicians to sort of also understand more?
I could not agree more with you. Let me indulge you in an analogy quickly, right? We have markers of cardiovascular disease and risk. There's routine blood pressure monitoring, cholesterol and other lipid monitoring, and so on and so forth. And depending on the severity and the response or lack thereof of the individual being treated for hypertension, being treated for hypercholesterolemia, then there are additional tests provided there, such as cardiac imaging and so on and so forth here. The same we are trying to emulate in type 1 diabetes. Staging has become very, very important. Staging kidney disease, cardiac disease, and now type 1 diabetes autoimmunity. So I mentioned this in my introductory remarks that I think that has been a game changer, is the staging, and that's included in the monitoring guidance here. But also the monitoring guidance provides us useful tools to avoid a dangerous condition called diabetic ketoacidosis, which happens in most individuals when they're not monitored. When they're autoantibody positive and they continue to go through the journey, pre-symptomatic, silent type 1 diabetes, not realizing that they're in a condition, and they end up at the day of diagnosis in frank insulin requiring diabetes, in frank diabetic ketoacidosis or DKA. This is a dangerous condition that in the least it requires hospitalization, but in most extreme cases it could lead to coma and even unfortunately death in a subset of the individuals here. And it's a precipitous occurring, so it does not give you time to prepare. However, with monitoring guidance, it gives the individual, their family, as well as the caregiving team preparation steps, and as I said before, a playbook or a guidebook, so you can avoid dangerous diabetic ketoacidosis.
One of the things that comes up also, apart from the testing, is the impact on the psychosocial side of things. So what do you feel the consensus guidance does about that? Does it touch upon the relevant areas?
Absolutely. The recommendation has 4 pillars to it. For adolescents, for pediatric and adolescents, for adults, education and awareness, but most importantly, psychosocial monitoring for mental health. It is a very critical component. Most individuals, about 90% of them, do not have a known family history of type 1 diabetes, a first-degree relative, an immediate family member. Therefore, their average knowledge and awareness of type 1 diabetes is essentially lacking, and for no fault of theirs. Secondly, because of the name diabetes in the disease, it's often misconstrued and confused with type 2 diabetes, which is more prevalent around the world, in the United States and everywhere else around the world. And so there's a lot of opportunity to misunderstand the disease, the severity of the disease. And therefore, an important component of the monitoring guidance is psychosocial help being provided by an experienced and qualified individual. That can be a psychiatrist, a psychologist, can be a behavioral scientist, can be one of many people that can be part of the care team along with the clinicians to be able to provide that monitoring, that hand-holding, as I said, to walk one and their immediate family or other caregivers through this particular journey. And many individuals, many investigators have called this a softer landing. You have to land the plane for inclement weather or whatever be the situation. How can you make the landing, the journey, as well as the landing, as smooth and not dangerous as possible? And there comes in the role of a psychologist or an equivalent individual.
Thank you. But obviously, as I always say, the greatest science is the one that gets into lives. And it sounds like this is something that needs a lot of collaboration between the specialist endocrinologist and the primary care provider. That's where lots of the people are, the education. What's your views on that? Is that very much going to be a partnership-based model? Any thoughts from you or where you feel that bit could sort of really connect with each other?
Yeah, and absolutely. So this has to be a multidisciplinary team taking care of it. And by multidisciplinary, I am including, just to name a few, a primary care physician, pediatrician, or a general internal medicine for adults. Because when you don't have insulin requiring diabetes, you go to a primary care for your regular checkups. You don't go to an endocrinologist. And then this guidance also covers what the role of this primary care doctor or other allied healthcare professionals would be. Then the guidance includes, according to the progression of the disease, then you hand over the care team to a specialist care team, such as an endocrinologist or other equivalent professional there. And so, and then there comes in a dietary consultant. There comes in a nurse practitioner. There comes in a psychologist or a behavioral scientist. And there comes in education component to it. So there will be a multidisciplinary team here to help you understand what staging of type 1 diabetes is and which stage you are in now. When are you likely to progress the next stage of the disease? What are the do's and don'ts during that step there? And what are the myths that need to be busted along the way? And what are the facts that need to be ingrained into the mind of the individual there? So yes, it is going to be a multidisciplinary care team. And that's where I think some of the economic challenges in the healthcare systems will have to be tested and improved upon in the coming years.
Thank you as ever. So I'm going to take an opportunity to thank you, Dr. Dutta. As ever, conversations with you are full of passion, fire, and verve. And you know what? To all the listeners, if you have type 1 diabetes in your family, or indeed have a carer, or indeed look after anybody, I think that should fill you with a lot of hope as to what's happening, what's coming, and what's coming through as well. I would heavily encourage you to go through the Breakthrough T1D website, all the fantastic work going on. And I can tell you from my own personal experience of having worked with Breakthrough T1D, the passion is always there, the drive is always there, which is lovely to see. So I would also remind listeners to look out for the next podcast in the series. That's also, the next one is going to be with Professor Ezio Bonifacio. We're going to talk a little bit more about screening for type 1 diabetes in the real world. Today, we have heard some amazing views as to what Breakthrough T1D are contributing, what's coming through the challenges, but the exciting future as well. And hopefully you'll all join us, not only about listening to this one in detail, but also for the future versions of this podcast. Thank you very much for your time, everybody, especially Dr. Dutta. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Kar and the Bridge podcast team here for having me. I look forward to listening to the following podcast that you mentioned.
For more Bridge content on type 1 diabetes, including the latest events and initiatives, find us on Spotify, YouTube, and our website.